Do you find yourself still dreaming of trying to make your break into the tech industry? If yes, you are not alone. So my name is Hannah. I am a full-time UX designer. I've been in this space for about 2.5 years. And yeah, I tripled my salary from a full-time graphic designer to a UX designer. And there are so many people that are still trying to pave that path. And I myself am someone who have navigated that. I did this 2.5 years ago, and I want to share that whole story. And I know that there are so many different resources and tips and stuff out there, and I'm going to be honest, this is going to be another one of those, but I deeply want to share my story because I find that it isn't until you find something that resonates with you and your story or something clicks that you can actually maybe unlock something that you've maybe been missing along the way. So I think this will be a 2-part series. This first part, I'm going to be talking about my background, and then also my number one thing that you should be doing if you haven't done already to set yourself up for success as you're looking to transition into a user experience role. And the reason I want to talk about my background is because I fully believe that it wasn't until I found a voice that resonated with me that I could see myself in this path, that I could see and start taking pieces of my past, my career history, thoughts and ideas, and I started putting them all together because there was a voice and a person in front of me that I was able to understand and see myself in. So let's dive in to step number 1, which is, what's my background? I am a first-generation college student, and I went to school and I studied international relations and languages, and so that was my passion. I thought I wanted to work in that whole realm. It's still a complete love and passion of mine, but I found myself after graduation with the spark of wanting to be in graphic design and doing actually physical product design as my goal. So my story starts with learning everything that I could here off of YouTube. Number 1, from Skillshare, which is a fantastic platform. And really just trying to find my ways, really just trying to learn every tool that I possibly could. So that was my goal, was to, what are the things that I needed to learn? And that whole process of being curious and really just starting as a beginner and leaning into that, asking questions and searching for stuff that I could find, really led me to where I am. So I started I worked so many different odd jobs after I graduated. My first job in this creative field was as a graphic designer. I worked in the wedding industry, and I did everything from invitations, and I built a calligraphy business alongside of that. And so I learned calligraphy, same exact way. It was all through, what am I curious about and what can I learn? And I used YouTube and Skillshare along the way. It was a high growth period for me, but I was curious and interested, and that led me to where I am now. So I worked as a graphic designer, and then I found my goal was I knew as a physical product designer, I needed to know the design tools, and this is the reason why I went into graphic design. So I used my path from graphic designer to physical product designer, and I did both along that way, and I ended up working for an accessory company, and then I started a leather goods company. So there's been a lot of meandering, but by doing that physical product design, it made me realize that I loved the iteration process of it. I loved sourcing, and I learned a lot along that path. I got a little bit tired of having to have a studio and having to have all these other different things, and so I decided to pivot, and I went into digital because it was an area that I wanted to learn more of. So I took my graphic design, my physical product design, and I pivoted myself into going full-time into more marketing graphic design. And so I led the creative team for a franchise, and I ended up doing a lot more customer experience stuff, which at the time did not realize that was a job to be done. I just thought it was part of my path and part of my toolkit, and I didn't realize that user experience was actually a thing. So from there, I ended up From there, it was from 2019, I was starting to get a little bit curious about different areas. I enjoyed a lot more of that customer experience side of it. And then I ended up finding that I needed to switch. And it was during 2020 that I made the decision that this was not the right path for me and I wanted different. I ended up doing a bunch of research, and I decided to take the path of a boot camp. So I enrolled with Springboard in early 2021. And I cannot be happier with that decision at that time. I cannot speak for the program that it is now, but in 2021, it was exactly what I needed. I wanted a one-on-one mentor. I wanted specific material, and I wanted accountability because I knew that that's how I learned. So I ended up, like I said, going through the boot camp, and I went all in on that whole process. So I made sure I had a plan. I had a 1-year vision. I knew that I wanted to end it beforehand, before it was done, and I wanted to come out of it with a job. And that's what ended up happening. But I went in with the intentions that I was going to give it my all, and I knew this was a path that I wanted. So that was my path from going from studying international relations and languages to self-learning basically every career path along the way, and then finding myself now as a full-time UX designer. And my number one tip right now, the number one tip that I give to everyone that has asked me this question, and I have been asked this question a lot because I do mentorship on the side, or how do I transition from X role into user experience when I have no experience? And my number one tip is that is not true. So the first thing that I would say, if you are on this process and you're trying to transition into UX, or you're interested, is to take out your resume. And I want you to, you already have everything listed out most likely. If you haven't, that's step one, but take out your resume and look at every single role, from the whatever schooling you went into. If you didn't, that's totally fine. Whatever schooling, whatever jobs that you've took, and you have a job description on there. Now I want you to take that, duplicate this resource, duplicate this document, in whatever form that you have. And then I want you to look at it through the lens of a user experience designer. So what things in your job did you do that can relate back to user experience? So an example, like let's say you're a school teacher. You are spending most of your days trying to facilitate a group, right? You're distilling information in a way that is hopefully getting through to your students in your classroom. That is essentially what you're doing on the job as a UX designer. And so look at the things that you're doing in your current role and try and put on that lens of like, okay, if I were a user experience designer, what would I do in this role? And so that's what I ended up doing, because for all of my roles, and then that way it allowed me to have this storyline already written out when I did get the opportunity, and it will come. If you haven't had it, I promise it'll be there, but like when you get the opportunity to interview, you'll already have everything written out from every single role that you're in that's outlining those UX roles and outlining those UX like skill sets that you already have. So everything you can translate. So the jobs that I did in illustration, in calligraphy, in graphic design, because it is a little bit more for me, because I did a lot of my previous work was in graphic design, it was a little bit more easily translatable, but not exactly, because the role that I moved into was heavily more user experience and more research-based stuff, and that stuff I hadn't fully done in a UX role, right? But because I had already done this process of taking this information, taking my resume and looking at it through the lens of that job at that time, and then duplicating it and creating it into a what did I do in all of these roles, but through a UX vision, that allowed me to really feel confident in the fact that I know I may not have a title UX here, but I have a skill set in this area. So number one tip if you're trying to transition and you haven't done this, I would say 100% stop what you're doing and do that. And now it's getting a little dark, so we are going to go into the next parts of this series tomorrow. So I'll see you soon. All right, well, there you have it. That was my background, and I hope there's something in there that maybe you see in yourself, or a path that is slightly different than others that I've seen out there. So I hope there's something in there that helps you kind of look at your own path and realize that it's not linear, it's never going to be, and we all find our path along the way. We all find our own path and end up where we want to be along the way. But, and then my number one tip, that if you are trying to go this process and you haven't done, I would 100% say that's where you should start. So I hope that helps. If a resource would help on that front, please let me know down below. And if there are any other questions relating to how to transition into a user experience design, into a user experience role, what is user experience, what does a day as a user experience designer look like, those are all things that I've been toying with the idea of sharing. If any of those things are interesting to you, please let me know down below in the comments. And in part 2 of how do we triple our salaries, in part 2 of this video, I'm going to be talking about all of my resources that I used personally and I still use, and all of the resources that I used to transition into UX, but also resources that I still use today. We're going to go into that, and then we're also going to go into, I'm going to share a resource that I made for y'all to use. It's something I use to map out any big goal that I'm trying to set for myself, and it's in a tool that I use on a day-to-day in my role as a user experience designer, and hopefully by the end of that you're going to be able to already check off another tool as a skill set off of your list. So that's the goal. If you are interested in anything else, please let me know. If it goes live, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'm just starting out, so any subscribe helps, and then comment down below if there's any questions that you have alongside of UX that you'd like me to share. And so in the meantime, thank you for being here, and I will talk to you soon.